So I'm gonna get recording here. And okay, so let me just walk you through what's in the actual project because it's kind of limited right now. All I did was I replaced the initial view controller that's in here with a custom view controller. It's actually got nothing in it. There's nothing different. I just dragged out a UIViewController, and then I made a view controller file, which we're actually like not even going to touch tonight. It just needed an accompanying file to be able to class it. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to make a custom sign-in page. So we're not going to worry about authentication or getting in touch with an API to get like a bearer token or anything. We're just going to make the UI for a login page and try to make it look slick. And the main thing I want to get out of tonight is just have you guys get some more practice, more reps making programmatic UI and setting up the constraints for it programmatically. Because tomorrow, you are not going to touch Interface Builder. You won't be using Storyboard at all. Like it'll all be done in code. And I'll walk you through tonight how we're going to kind of approach that. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to talk about what UIControl actually is. So can someone give me just what their base level understanding of UIControl is?
So we were just talking about this in our stand-up. It seems like UIControl are the features that allow you to interact with, a view or some kind of object on the screen.
Exactly. So UIControl is a custom type, and like Mark said, it has access to features that users would interact with. So in other words, it is user interface elements. So we use this type, UIControl, to make our own custom UI. So if you wanted to make a special button and Interface Builder couldn't do it in the way that you wanted it to, you would have to use UIControl to set them up. Because things like animations and transitions and sometimes segues and things, they can't be triggered unless they're created programmatically. Interface Builder is awesome. And you'll see tonight like why I prefer to do things in the storyboard because it's a time saver. But there are certain cases where you're going to need to make your UI programmatically. And that will be definitely the case tomorrow to make that actual control object. So now that we've kind of talked about that, if I were to make a UI element, where would I start? And this is kind of how tonight will go. I'll be like asking you guys questions and we'll just move to the next step depending on what you say. But how would I make a custom UI object? We don't even know what it is yet, but how do I start?
Well, you can start by pulling out a UI view and putting it on your screen.
Yeah. The cool thing about this is every single view controller already has a view pre-programmed into it. So Spencer talked a little bit about the layers today, but that's a layer, the very topmost layer that's included on any view controller. So if we wanted to make a smaller one and set it in like a specific area, and tomorrow's will be this way, we could totally drag out a view and make some predetermined like constraints for it in the storyboard, but we're not even going to touch the storyboard tonight. So Mark's right, we do need a view because UIControl, it relies on UIView to create those elements programmatically. So we've got a view, but how do I go about starting to make this custom UI object now?
Should we start by getting creating a file, like a Swift file?
Yeah, that's exactly how we're gonna do it. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit Command N. We're gonna make a Swift file. And like I said, tomorrow, this is done for you already, but I just want to walk you guys through it so that you're aware and you kind of see how it's working. So what I'm going to call this file is just going to be the name of our actual UI. So I'm going to call it sign up page. That's what it's going to be called. So I'm going to hit enter after I got sign up page, and we're just going to have a blank file here to work with. Okay, so now that we've got this file, what should I do as far as trying to create this UI programmatically?
Get the import UIKit?
Yes. I'm actually going to skip that step so you guys see why, because I think tomorrow you might run into this. So, assuming we did UIKit, what should I be doing next?
Class. Something. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's call this exactly what we named the file. So sign up page. Okay. And then what do I need to do next?
Set your sub views. like
Okay.
a method to set your subviews?
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that. The only critical part is we have to conform to the UI control type for it to turn into an actual UI element. So we can set up all the views and do that fun stuff, but it's never going to show up in our storyboard unless we conform to that type. So I'm going to come here and give it the type of UI control. Now you'll see that it doesn't pre-populate. And the reason for that being is Foundation is just a bare bones framework. We want to import UIKit. And if I hit Command B, we'll all be good to go. So no matter what UI element you guys are creating, it always is going to have this base layout. We're going to have to import UIKit. There's going to be a class that'll be named whatever the UI object is. And then it's going to be of type UI control. So under the hood, when you guys are dragging out objects from the object library into your storyboard, they all have some sort of custom file underneath. There's kind of a pre-programmed element to sliders and buttons and labels. And so don't let this be like a brand new thing that you're making a custom UI. You've been using all these elements all along that rely on this same kind of programmatic response. It's just that Apple's been nice and made them for us to make our lives easier and quicker. So, okay, awesome. And then CC said that we need to do a setup views. So one thing that I'm gonna have you guys do from now on is start to organize your code. Has anyone ever used marks before? A little bit? Okay, marks are awesome because one, you can go back and refer to different aspects of your code by searching it. I just like it because it's like a good header for what I'm going to do. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say mark, and then after mark, I can give it kind of the header of what goes underneath that section. So I can do a mark for properties, I can do a mark for functions. What I'm gonna do here is we're gonna do methods and functions. Oops. So we're gonna do methods and functions. And then as CC mentioned, we're definitely gonna have to do a setup, I'm gonna call it setup subviews. Some sort of method that on top of our view that we have here in the storyboard, we're gonna be adding different layers on top of it of like labels and other views and buttons and things like that. And that function is going to do it for us. So this is our main view. And then we are going to be adding almost like a sandwich, adding things on top of that view with this method here. Okay, we are missing a critical thing that we need to include whenever we use UI control, whenever we programmatically make UI. Can you guys think of what it might be?
A variable?
Yeah, we're definitely gonna need some variables. You're right, we definitely need to add some things. But as far as just getting this code to show up in the storyboard, what'd you say, Josh?
2 and knits. The
Yeah.
regular one is required.
Tomorrow, you're only gonna need one. And I'll just show you guys this one because I think going forward, it'll be more common for you. I'm gonna call this required initializers. Whoops. And the only one that we're gonna use is this one right here. So we're gonna say required init, and you'll kind of see them pre-populate. This first required init is all that we really need. So it's this coder, a decoder of NSCoder. You guys don't really need to know what's going on under the hood. The basic idea is that our code is archived in a certain way, and our view controller in the storyboard is archived a certain way. And this method kind of lets them mesh together. So it takes the aspect of our code that we've written and the archived under the hood code of the view controller and lets them actually appear. In other words, this is what we're going to use to actually get things to show up on our view controller.
So Mitch, you would call this required init anytime you're setting up UI view programmatically? Or is it, I guess, what are the circumstances where you use it?
There's going to be different case scenarios. Starting next week, I'm definitely going to send you guys more cheat sheets. I've had a little bit more time to work on them and send you out things. And I feel like that helps a lot just to have like some sort of guideline of when things are supposed to be used and when they're not supposed to be. As a general guideline, whenever you're going to use a UI control, we're going to require this init. It's just something that's necessary in order to transform your code. into actual visible user interface elements. Okay, and then inside this, we have to call the super init method. It's just an override method that gets us where we need to be. In this parameter for coder, and this is like a lot of boilerplate code, you guys, so if it doesn't make sense, it's fine. It kind of think of it as like your viewed load almost. It's the place where things can actually occur and happen. Okay, so now that we've got this init, we can think of it kind of as viewed load. There's one thing that we're going to call inside of it that we've already made. What are we going to call inside of here?
Set up subviews.
Yep.
Sorry.
Just like I said, like our viewed load, we're going to call that setup subviews, because we can write all this code out, but if it never gets called, we're never going to see those elements actually be produced in the storyboard. Okay, so now that we've made this custom class, there is a critical step that we've missed in the storyboard. This is the only thing we're going to touch in the storyboard today. But if you look here, this view that exists in the login view controller, it's just classed as a UI view. What do I want to be classing this as now?
The name of that file.
Yeah, it's going to be our class sign up page. Think of it just as a layer where we've got this new template, and the template is reusable. We can use it in a lot of different circumstances, but we have to class that UIViewController to actually match. You guys will see later down the road, especially with what you're going to do tomorrow, but people have gone to the trouble of making really cool UI, and they've put it out publicly for you to use. So you're really going to appreciate this UIControl class, because you can go and take things that other people have made and put them into your code files, and all you have to do is class the view that you've created, and like, boom, things will show up. Cool buttons, sliders, different things like that. So really, really neat stuff. Okay, does anyone have any questions about what we've done so far? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make another file folder, because I'm OCD and I like to organize this. And I'm gonna call this helpers, because it's not really, oh shoot, this won't let me do it right away. It's not really a model object. It's not really a view. It's more of just like an aspect that we use to help us accomplish whatever we're doing here. This will happen all the time. I usually have to close Xcode with this stupid bug, but anyways. As long as you have that sign up page inside your main target, like inside the actual file folder, we're good to go. Okay, so I've kind of thought about how I want to set up this sign in view page, but I haven't really created it. So this will be fun to kind of go with you guys and walk alongside you and see how you feel about programmatically creating UI. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to add another markup here. And this mark is going to be our properties. And there's like a lot of debate in the dev world about where you should put properties in your folder. Some people have said the bottom, some people have said the top. The general consensus among our instructors is that they should be at the top. But don't quote me on that. If you hear differently, I'm sorry, but I feel like that's, I got told opposite halfway through Lambda. They said, don't put them on the bottom anymore, put them on the top. So we're gonna put them on the top, but if someone down the road tells you that's wrong, I don't even know what to reason with that. That's just kind of how it goes. But okay, so let's kind of think about what elements, before we even code it out. Sorry, what's that?
It's like someone, never introducing characters. They put all the characters down at the bottom when you start reading a book. I know that's not how it really works, but it's like reading from top to bottom, left to right. It's like, I want to know what I'm dealing with as I start digging into this code. So putting it at the bottom, I don't even see how that makes sense. Unless someone's paying you to do it. And then I guess if they're paying you to do it, then you do what they say.
Yeah, for the longest time when I got told to put them on the bottom, I didn't get why. Because like you said, it makes more sense to like see what I'm dealing with at the top and then actually make things happen with it below. But, well, I don't know. Anyways, let's start thinking about what elements actually need to go inside of this sign up page. So can someone kind of just, you guys can shout out whenever you want, but what needs to go on this view controller if we need to sign up to something?
Username and password.
Yeah, so we're gonna want definitely like text fields, right? Those will be like, maybe I'll just call them like an email and password text fields. Okay, what else do we need inside of this view?
Sign up button.
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely gonna need a button to like log in, sign up. Okay. What else can you guys think of? Think of just like whenever you sign into Twitter or Facebook, or you
What about
download
one of those like strength things or whatever?
like a password indicator.
Like yeah, like how weak or whatever your password should be or
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
We just for simplicity's sake, we won't include it tonight, but that's a good idea to go off. In fact, what we're going to do tonight, just to simplify, is we're just going to do a login button. And then the other thing I would say is we need some labels. So I'm going to add some labels to just say like email, and then I'll have the text field below where they can enter their email, and then a label that says password, and then they can have a text field to enter in their password. So I like to kind of set up my app and just move slowly through it. UI is cool in that as soon as you write out the programmatic code, you can see it in real time show up. So let's start with, I have an idea. Okay, I sent you guys an image actually. So what we're gonna start with is a background image. And if you look inside the After Hours channel, I've loaded in this image here for you guys. So go ahead and download that image. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go into the resources folder. And then inside the resources folder is an asset catalog. So this just stands for XC Xcode assets. And then whenever you're adding images to your Xcode project, you're gonna add them inside this app icon area. So what I'm gonna do, let me just like squeeze this down because I don't have a ton of space here. I've just got the background image right here. So I'm just gonna drag it inside and put it in the app. And we can probably leave it as is. I think it'll be fine just as is there. Okay, cool. So if you guys have that in the chat, will you guys give me in the participants list, sorry, will you give me a thumbs up if you got that loaded into your project? Sweet. And if you guys are stuck, let me know. This is for your benefit, and we're not on really a timeline. Like I said, we'll keep it hopefully within an hour, but you know, if you guys get stuck, I'd rather that you get help rather than to go back and watch this again. So let me know if you ever need to redo something. Okay, so we've got this image loaded in. Now, let's try to programmatically bring up this image to be our background image of the sign-in page. So what I'm gonna do, and I'll start first and show you guys what I would do, and then going forward, I'll ask you kind of how we wanna approach this a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is in properties here, I'm just gonna declare what I'm going to create programmatically. So we're creating a background image. So I'm gonna call this background image. Probably background image view is a good way to describe it. It's going to be of type UI image, image view. And I'm gonna go ahead and just initialize it. Because if I don't initialize it here, I'm going to have to initialize it down here, and it's just, I'd rather just get it out of the way now and we can kind of tackle it step by step. Okay, so I've got an image view. Now, how do I go about getting this onto that view that already exists?
Add subview.
Yep. So what we're gonna do, and you're gonna do this a lot tomorrow, we're gonna get a lot of lines of code today. Don't let it overwhelm you. I'm purposely doing things very like step by step so that you don't get too confused. So we're gonna add subview, and then I'm gonna add in my background image view. So now if you think about it, this layer that we have, this view, now has an image view somewhere on top of it. It exists somewhere on top of it. If we ran the simulator now, we'd have no idea where it is or what it would look like. In fact, what I'm gonna do first is I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna say background color. This is referring to the actual view. And I'm gonna set it to orange, just so that you guys can see kind of like the layers that we're dealing with here. And the simulator is probably gonna take a sec. So as we go creating these programmatic UI, lately this week, kind of what we've been doing is like we'll do a big chunk and then press play and we'll see all the elements pop up. I want to do it step by step with you guys so that you can see your code actually working in real time. I think that will be a big help to you. Okay. Sweet. Okay, here's what the simulator is showing me. You guys will probably have something similar. So if we start with just set up subviews and we set the background color to orange, this is what we're going to get. So this is a good way to indicate that your UI control is actually working. We've correctly subclassed the view. We've made the required initializer that kind of does a viewed load type thing for us. And then we've made one adjustment here on line 27 of changing the background color. So I just did that kind of as a reality check to make sure I'm on the right track. So now that I know that, I'm like, okay, cool, I can go and add things to this class because I know it works. So do a lot of testing, you guys, print statements and make small modifications and see if things are working. That will help you be a really diligent programmer. Okay, so what's the biggest problem with us adding in this background image view right now? Like why for one, there's no image loaded into it, but what's the real key issue at hand of why we can't use this yet?
It's not constrained.
Exactly, because it's just code right now. So the code could do whatever it wants with it. It could put it 1,000 points away from anywhere on our view if it really wanted to. We have no way of knowing where exactly it's existing in code right now. So how do I go about constraining this background image view?
That's layout constraint.
Yes, but we need to do something first.
That translates thing into false.
Yes, so we're gonna do background image view and then start just auto typing translates auto resizing mask into constraints. And then we set this to true.
False.
False. I was worried that someone was going to just go with it. No, this means that this isn't going to automatically make constraints for us. This is going to let us go in and make our constraints exactly how we want them to be, which, like, once you step into this mode, it's kind of like you're a designer. You are designing UX here. It's kind of fun to be able to see this happen in code. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and make some constraints. Because this view is a background image, I'm probably going to want it to cover the entire view. So how should I go about constraining it to do that for us?
Set leading, trailing, and bottom to 0. And
let's do that. So let's do so we'll take the image view and let's start with leading. I think leading will just be a good thing to start with. So we'll do the leading anchor and we're going to tap into the constraints aspect. Now, whenever you hit constraints here, we're going to get a ton of different initializers of different constraints that'll be pulled up. Oops, constraint. We're going to get a bunch. This first one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this first one, this equal to. And what this equal to is going to do is we can give it some sort of anchor to hook onto. So because this background image view, I want it to cover the whole screen and the view already exists, what we're going to do is we're just going to take the leading anchor of that view. Another thing you can do is you can just write self to kind of indicate which leading anchor this is talking about. This is talking about the view here in the storyboard. This like bare bones view that we've subclassed. Do you guys have any questions about that, or does that make sense? So we're taking the background image view's leading anchor, so the left edge, and we're making it equal to the view's left edge. So in other words, we are just putting a perfect paper on top of another. Now, is this constraint going to work right now if I run the simulator? Percy, I think you said no. Taylor, I saw a shake.
Yeah, you gotta do it. Is it active?
Yes, we got to activate it. So is active. We're going to set it equal to true. So this is great, but you can think of our image view now as like a tiny, tiny little sliver possibly, because we only set the leftmost side. So we got to add those other X and Y aspects of it. What I'm going to do is we're just going to do all 4 directions. So I'm going to say background image view dot, we'll do top anchor now, dot constraint. And the constraint is going to be equal to what? What do you guys think?
Self.top anchor.
Yeah, we'll just put top anchor just so we don't have to be like redundant. And then we'll just set it to active. And I'm going to keep doing that for all of them. And this will seem like, oh man, this is a lot of code for us to do right now. But I want to purposely do this bit by bit for you guys so that it clicks and it makes sense. So then we're going to do the trailing anchor dot constraint is equal to trailing anchor. And then is active is equal to true. And then this is our last anchor that we have to make just so that we fill out the entire view. And there's probably several ways we could go about making this constraint happen so it just blows up to the view. We could use bounds, we could use a lot of different things. I'm going to do what you guys are familiar with what we practiced this week. So hopefully that is a helpful thing to you. And then we're going to do bottom anchor, and then is active. Okay. So sweet. We've set up this.
One thing is, are you wanting the safe area or the entire view?
We're going to fill up the entire view because the picture I gave you guys is actually larger than what's going to show up on the simulator. So the picture is going to fill the entirety of the white space. And you'll see that here in a second. Just generally, how do you get, I don't know how to word this question. How do we make an image view take on a picture? How do we get this picture from our assets catalog inside that image view?
Set the image property to UI image by name.
So we've got our background image view. Anytime you guys think of an image view, think of a picture frame. So the frame itself doesn't actually have a photo or a picture inside, but there is a property within it that's an image. So that's like the picture that's in the picture frame. And then you guys will use this initializer a lot, but it's just called UI image. And then there's a named string aspect. And what we can do with this named string aspect is as long as the name matches with whatever the asset is called, and I just copy and paste that to be sure, but you could type it if you want. As long as they match 100%, the compiler will go in to the assets catalog and look for something with this string. And if it matches, it'll go ahead and throw it in the image view for us. So I'm going to go ahead and run this now. And what we should expect to see is an image view with that photo from our assets catalog, filling up the entire page here. Cool. Okay. So it's got like that kind of blurry lens photo kind of looking thing. So this is going to be the kind of the background image of this sign up page. Because I didn't want to do like a white page. I feel like that would have been boring, especially because this week we covered UI elements. And I feel bad that you guys got a little gypped. There was a module that talked just about stylistic elements, like changing colors and fonts and pictures and things. And we actually took it out so that you guys could get more practice drawing, which I think is actually more valuable. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of this tonight because they're good things to know. And you're going to use this initializer quite a bit. So just to kind of simplify this project that we're going to get into, I'm just going to call this background image in part of our function so that I keep things organized. Okay, cool. So does anyone have any questions about what we did so far to get this image to show up programmatically? If you feel like, sorry, go ahead.
Mine is not showing up, my background image.
Did you call setup subviews in your required init?
Yes.
Did you class the UI view in the storyboard?
That is a good question. No, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, you got to go ahead and run it. Hopefully that should work for you, CC. If not, let me know. Okay, cool.
Mitch, I got a quick question.
Sure.
you know what, when you constrain it, right now you're constraining it to itself, right? But in previous lessons, we could also constrain it to the view with margins, like with the safe space, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I tried that for the leading constraint, and it doesn't come up, like it doesn't autocomplete.
For the safe area?
Yeah.
Well, we won't need to use the safe area. And that might be that we didn't drag out a UI view and constrain it with what we wanted. For tonight and especially tomorrow, you won't need to worry about using safe area layouts or anything like that.
Well, I just wanted to experiment to, you know, because in my mind it should work because it's also available. So I'm just curious why it didn't show up in the autocomplete.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that and see why exactly that's not working. But
okay, sure, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got this image showing up now, and kind of my vision for this is somewhere we want to say a label that says something like enter your email, and then we're going to want to put a text field in where they can actually put their email. And then somewhere here, we're going to put another label that says enter your password and another text field so they can put it in. And then some sort of login button to appear when that's finished, or it can exist all the time if we want it to. So let's go ahead and tackle the email label next. But like I said, what I always like to do, and tomorrow these will be created for you, so don't worry, but I like to declare the actual programmatic property that I'm going to make first, and then I modify it in the setup subviews. I'm going to say our email label is of type UI label, and then I'm going to go ahead and initialize it. Okay, cool. Now we've got this label that exists in code, but it doesn't exist in our actual view yet. It won't appear. So what steps do I need to take to get this to happen? This isn't a trick question. We just did this.
I have a random question. Should we be committing this like last time? Did you want us to do that, or?
Sure. Yeah, let's commit. So we just set up the background image, so I'm going to just commit really quickly. Set up background image for sign-in page.
Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
Can you go back over what you just said to me?
Oh, to class it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So, okay. So when you come into the storyboard,
Mm-hmm.
every controller has a view property inside. So what I just did is, yours might just say view right here.
Yes.
But just click on the view, and then you're going to come over to the identity inspector.
Okay.
Where it says class, like we usually class view controllers, you're just going to type the name of that custom UI control that we made.
Got it. It wasn't doing it earlier. I don't know why.
Oh, gotcha. You're good. Sometimes you just have to build. Like I said, guys, tomorrow this is going to be done for you, so that's just that much less work to do. The bulk of what you're going to be doing tomorrow is programmatically making the UI like we're doing right now, programmatically making some constraints, and then doing some logic to change things as we go. All right, so back to the...
Did you add the subview?
Yes, we're going to add it to the subview. And then we're just going to go ahead and add that email label. And remember, the subview is trailing from our view, that actual first layer, that first view. So we're just adding a layer on top of it. Okay, so we've got this email label added. This is going to take a little bit more tweaking and customizing to get it to show up. But let's first start with the constraints. So what do I always have to do if I want to programmatically make a constraint?
It translates auto resizing, mask, and constraint.
Perfect. So we're gonna translate auto resize mask. Set that to false. That means that we can now make those constraints. It won't do it for us. Okay, now this is where you guys kind of have to think intellectually about how you want this to look in your code. And it's gonna take some playing with. You're never gonna get it right the first time unless you're a UI whiz. But let's go ahead and constrain those first four elements like we did. We'll start with the leading, go to the top, and then trailing, and go from there. So let's start with email label dot, like I said, we'll do a leading anchor, or yeah, leading anchor first, dot constraint. And then let's try to think about this now, because we can place it at those anchors that we placed before, but it would jump off the page. So that's where you kind of have to scan through these initializers and see what you might want to use here. Just as a hint, and we'll go and I'll let you guys practice this later, but we're going to use this equal to with a constant. And the constant is exactly like how when we click on the TIE fighter and we can set those points away from a certain nearby object, this is exactly how it's written in code. So we're going to say our view's leading anchor, and then how far away do we want this label to be from the left edge of the leading anchor? What do you guys think?
20.
Sure. 20 is a great number. 20 is like a pretty generic spacing number to use. And then let's go ahead and do the top anchor. Same thing. I'm going to do from the top anchor. And then for the constant here, what do you guys think we should use as far as how far away we want it from the top? We could use literally any number.
Depends on the look. You could just have 20 again if you want.
Yeah, let's start with 20. And then let's do, because if you think about it, a UI really only needs a x-axis coordinate and a y-axis coordinate to exist. I'm going to put, we don't even have to do a trailing anchor if we don't want to, but I'm going to do one just because. And we're going to do it from the trailing edge. And then if we do 20 again, do I just leave it as 20?
Yeah, just a reminder, those three need activated.
Negative 20?
Negative 20. Why is it negative 20? Whoever said that.
Because it's from the right, going to the left. Yeah.
Yes, so if you think about it, going to the right of the trailing anchor would mean going off of the view. It would be on the right-hand side of the view, whereas negative 20 is going to push us back into the view. Okay, so that's going to be enough to constrain this label to exist somewhere kind of in the top area, I would say, of our view. But the problem is this label is going to be blank and empty without a couple of attributes in it. So can you guys think of what kind of elements need to be included in this label?
The text?
Yeah, let's do the text. So we'll say email label, whoops, dot text is equal to, and what do you guys think the text should be for it?
Enter email.
Sure. Enter email. Okay. Now let's go ahead and run this and see where we're at. See what kind of this produces for us.
So Mitch, just to be clear, why do you use the negative trailing anchor? It's because of the way Swift interprets. I guess if you just could repeat the explanation again.
Sure. So if you think about it, our view is such that it relies heavily on like.
Okay.
So here is our trailing anchor on this right-hand side. And if we give it a positive point, sorry, Perry, Percy, can you just mute your mic for a sec?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. So this is going to be our trailing edge right here on this view. So if we go a positive direction, whatever the object is going to float this direction. If we go a negative direction, it's going to go back. You think of it like a graph. I know we don't want to probably think about math, but think of it just like a graph. And so with the leading edge, if we give it a negative number, it's going to float back this way. If we give it a positive number, it's going to float this way.
Don't we have to do dot is active after each one?
Yes, we missed that. That's kind of what I was wanting to lead into you guys with, is like, we're not going to see any of these elements for this actual programmatic thing that we made. Actually, I might be able to see it. Yeah, we can kind of see it at the top corner right here. But because none of the constraints are active, this programmatic code can just do whatever it wants. It just is going to put itself wherever it feels like it's good to go in. So we have to activate that is active property, and then our constraints will work. Is active equals true. Okay, let's go ahead and give that a run now. Sorry, my computer's not nearly as fast as the instructors. Okay. Still like hard to see, right? So now that we've kind of got it into view, the problem is this is constrained properly. This is 20 points from the edge and 20 points from the top. So how can we kind of fix this to work a little bit better for us?
This is where you want the safe.
Sorry, both of you guys talked at the same time. What'd you say, Josh?
I said, here's where you want the safe area because it'll come below that bezel.
True, true. We're gonna not rely on it just because I want you guys to see how you can kind of like anchor things off of what you've initially made, and it'll make your life kind of easier. The safe area will make your life easier too. But what I'm gonna do is, because this is up so high, I'm okay with where it kind of lives right there, but I'm just gonna bring it down. So we're gonna go to this top anchor constraint, and let's do, I don't know, let's do 150. So that'll bring it down a good chunk. So now when this comes out, we should be able to see this somewhere down lower here. There we go. So our enter email label looks a little bit sharper, is in the right place. We can kind of execute some code here and the user will be able to see it. So this looks pretty sharp as far as I'm concerned. Now, it looks a little like Apple-esque, kind of boring. We haven't really stylized it to match maybe the way that it would look good with. So what other attributes can I put into this to kind of make it soup it up a little bit, make it look a little bit better?
Change the color, font.
Yeah, let's start with the font, because the black might actually be the best option as far as the background goes. But I'll show you guys how to adjust the font. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna do email label and access the font property. And then we're gonna set this equal to what is called UI font. It's just the font type that we use. And then there's a bunch of initializers that you can use. I would just stick with probably this second one. This is a little bit more customizable, but it's not too bad. I'm gonna use system font. And then this is where we can size it. We can kind of tell it how big or small it wants to be. You guys are used to doing this in a storyboard, but this is the way that you do it programmatically. And then the weight, it's just an enum. And the weight has all these different properties like medium, light, regular, semi-bold, ultra light. I'm gonna do, let's do light and see how that looks. Run that really quick and see if that looks a little bit better. And obviously we're not going for something beautiful. We're gonna whip an app up, and I want you guys to get more practice programmatically creating things rather than making them beautiful, but just a good tactic to have. That looks a little bit better. I kind of like the direction that that's going in. Okay, cool. We could change the text color, but I feel like the lower we get, we probably want to keep all of our UI in this little area right here. The black's probably going to show up the very best, so I'm going to keep it to black. Okay, let's move ahead. Now, what other elements did we say we needed to go along with this email label?
Password.
Yeah, we'll need to do a password, but even before we get to the password.
Text field.
The text field.
There you go.
Before we jump ahead into the text field, I want to show you guys how to contain something within another view. And you'll see why in a second. Stylistically, this is a good thing to do. But what we're going to do next is we're going to make an email container view. And this is going to hold our text view inside of it. So like I said, whenever I make a new UI programmatically, I'll come up and make a constant for it. And I'm just going to call this email container view. And this is going to be of type UIView. And then I'm going to initialize it.
So Mitch?
Yeah.
So this is like programmatically equivalent to when we drag in that view, right, in storyboard? Like when we drag in that view and we put something in the view?
Exactly. Because tomorrow you guys aren't going to touch it at all. You're going to have to do it all by code. And so this is the way that we programmatically create them. Okay, so I'm going to make this container view. And what it's basically going to be is it is going to be kind of like a box in which our text view can live. Just as far as like view-wise goes, this is really important to make it look good. But tomorrow, you're going to have to take a container view and put multiple UI inside of it. And so this will help you get a little bit of practice doing that. So what's the first thing I need to do to add a new UI element?
Hey, Mitch, real quick, how did you get the email to sit where it's at on the screen? Because mine's still in the top left.
Okay. Do you have your constraints active?
Yes.
And what are your constants looking like? Because right here I have 20 for the leading, I have 150 down from the top, and then I have negative 20 in from the right side.
Okay. Yeah, I was missing 150. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Add a subview.
Yep, so we're going to add a subview. And this is going to be our email container view, just a UI view. And then we need to go ahead and constrain this. So what's the first thing we do to constrain programmatically?
The auto translates masking into Halloween costumes.
If this feels repetitive, you guys, it's because it's supposed to be, because I know that tomorrow some of you are going to come in and be like, why isn't this working? It's because you've missed like a little step that, you know, it'll be incremental in your code, but you just have to make sure you include it. Okay, so this container view can be adjusted now, but how should I go about constraining it? Let's start with the leading anchor. So how should I constrain this leading anchor?
To the label?
Yeah, let's set it just the same as the email labels. So we'll say email label dot leading anchor. And then let's maybe come in, just so it looks better, maybe we like come in a little bit. Or do you guys want it flush with the enter email? What do you think would look better?
Flush.
Okay, let's do it flush. That way we don't need the constant. And then we'll just say is active equals true. Now, the beauty of doing it this way, because if you notice, our email labels leading anchor is the exact same as the actual leading anchor of the view, just plus 20. So rather than going in and saying leading anchor and adding the constant, if we just use this email label dot leading anchor, if we ever make a change to the email label, it will also change this. So it just makes your life a little bit easier to do that. Okay, so we've got the leading anchor. Let's do the top anchor. This one's going to be a little bit trickier. How should we go about constraining this top anchor?
I would say like 10 points below the label.
Yeah, you're on the right track. So as we stack things, we use what's usually called system spacing. And system spacing will change depending on what app you use or what person you talk to, but generally 8 points of space is a good space between objects. So there's actually a really cool initializer that says equal to system spacing below. And what we can do here is we can just say email label dot bottom anchor. So we're saying from the bottom part of this email label, go the system defined spacing, which is usually just defaulted to 8. We can change that if we want to, but it's just going to default to 8. And then I'm going to give it a multiplier of just 1 because I don't actually want to have it jump too much. And then we'll set is active to true. Oops. You guys with me so far? Does anyone have questions about what we did with that? Just a different initializer for the constraint. Okay, now let's constrain the right-hand side as well. That's going to be the trailing edge. And then we're going to just use the equal to again. And we'll say email labels whoops, sorry, email label dot trailing. And we don't need a constant because email label already has that -20 constant. So it's already brought in from the right-hand side 20 points. We can't tell because it's left aligned here. But as long as we line up those two anchors, we won't have to worry about making a constant. The exactive is equal to true. And those are all virtually all the constraints that we need as far as positionally. But the problem with containers is that we need some sort of size for them. So this might be a new concept for you guys. Size is kind of critical. So the way that we can set up sizes is we can just say email container view dot height anchor. This tells us how tall we want it to be. You guys can do this in storyboard by dragging, but this is how we do it in code. This is how we tell it how tall we want it to be. And then now it's got this cool initializer that says equal to constant. And so if you look down in the mini documentation, it says return to constraint that defines a constant size for the anchor's size attribute. So in short, this is just saying this is how tall we're going to allow it to be. No taller than or no smaller than this constant. So we can kind of play around with this a little bit to see what kind of size we want it to be at. I'm gonna say 40. And then when we actually see it come up, we can kind of play around with it a bit. So this container view that we've made is invisible because by default, UI views have no properties that show. They're just empty white space, empty clear space. So how would I go about, maybe not even doing a background, but how would I go about making a border so that we could see where this actually is?
Layer?
Yes, yes. So we're gonna do email container view dot layer. It's this cool property that's for core animation. It's just like at runtime, what does the actual state of the object look like? That's what layer is. And then once we access the layer, there's a bunch of border, there's not a bunch, there's a few, but there's border color and border width. So first off, let's set up the border color. Now, if you guys option and click on this border color, you can see what type it's going to be. This one's going to be a CG color. So just keep that in mind with your colors. There's difference between UI and CG color. They're easily converted. Let's just go with black, just for simplicity's sake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say UI color dot black. And then to access that and make sure it turns into the core graphics color or core animation color, we're going to use CG color. So now if that border exists, we should be able to see it here. And we did miss the is active. So if you missed that, make sure that all of your constraints have is active. Otherwise, they're not actually going to be constrained. So let's run this. I'm not quite sure it's going to show up yet. If it does, great.
Well, we need to set the border width.
Yes. I don't think it does by default. Yeah, so it didn't come up for us. We do need to set the border width. So the same thing, we just access that layer property. So we're gonna go email container view dot layer dot border width. And then that border width is a constant. It's, if we drag over that one as well here, I'm just option clicking and hitting this. It's a CG float. So it's just a number value. So this is just how wide we want that border to be. Let's go with 2. That way we'll be able to see it, but it won't be super tiny. And I think if everything goes well, this should actually show up for us. So that's the gamble that you guys play when you make things programmatically, is you have to include all of these aspects in order for this to show up, because we can give it a border color, but it's not automatically going to give that a border width. It'll default to a border width of 0. So just be aware of that there are certain properties that need to be included.
So that spacing between enter email and the container is 8? Is that the 8 spacing?
It's 8 spaces. Yep, this is exactly 8 spaces right here. So this looks pretty sharp so far. Now, looking at this, like I see a lot of like oval shapes, and like maybe that's kind of the theme we want to go with. How would I go about making these from rough corner edges to like clean cut curved edges?
Layer.corner radius.
Yes.
Corner radius.
So email container view dot layer dot corner radius. Same thing here. Corner radius is a CG float. The higher the number, the more steep the curve will be, the more rounded. I think tomorrow the ones that you guys are going to use are 5. I think they might actually be pre-set up. So we'll just do a corner radius of 5. And then go ahead and run this.
So could you explain again what William just noted on about the height? Where are we getting that height again? Is it 40? It's not 40. Is it?
It's not 40. So the height is the height of the view. So this box right here is 40 points tall. And then we've constrained it to be 20 points from the leading, 20 points from the trailing, and then 8 points from the label. And we did that here with this on line 51, equal to system spacing below. And then we trailed it to, we anchored it to the email label's bottom anchor.
I was just curious because if you went to that interface builder and you also made a text view, would 40 give you that same? I mean, I guess it would, but I thought 40 seemed like a pretty big number for a text view. That's the only reason why I was asking.
The length of I think this is a 10R. I think the length of a 10R is like 400 points. Maybe?
Yeah, it's one of my main questions going into this. Like, is there a way we can like make ourselves a cheat sheet or something for where the point should be? Because like I'm always having trouble with like guessing. Basically, it's very confusing.
Good numbers to know are 8. So 8 is a great one for spacing things out vertically. And then generally things are at least 20 points away from the edge of the screen, or 20 points away. Safe area is considered 20 points away from the edge of the screen. So those are just good ones to know, but like that's part of making UI programmatically is you just kind of have to play with things. So like if we went back in here and we gave this a height anchor of 5, like this is going to be tiny, like super, super tiny. It might just be a line with the border on it because the border is as thick as the actual height. So it's just kind of something to play around with. That's why if you guys try to tackle things all at once, it's going to get messy. See, look how tiny that is. That's definitely not going to fit a text field that the user can see. Let's jump up to 50. 50 will look really sharp. But if you guys start piece by piece and just make sure things are going in, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. And then when, an hour before the sprint challenge is over, you're not scrambling to add in UI that isn't showing up. Like 95% of your UI is in and you're just working on logic. Sweet. So that looks pretty sharp. I feel like the user will be very capable of knowing that that's a place where they can enter in their email. Now, what's the problem here? I'm like clicking on it, I'm trying to type stuff, but like nothing's going into this.
It's not a text field. Yes.
Yeah, this is just a view. This is just a box. This is a stylistic box. So what we have to do is inside, and I wanted you guys to get some practice with this, is inside this view, we need to put in a text field. So I'm going to do this. Go back up to the top to my properties, and then I'm just going to declare a email text field. It's going to be a UI text field type, and I'm going to initialize it. Okay. And now, do I want to add this UI that we've made to the main view, or what should I do with this text field?
Add to the container view?
Yes. So what you can do is this add subview defaults to whatever is the main view. But what we can do here is if we have another UI view, and if I click on our email container view, that is of type UI view. So what I can do is, and this is going to be our email text field. What I can do here is I can say email container view dot add subview. So it's like a layer now. We've got the main layer, the main view on top. I've got this email container view on top of it here. And now inside of this box, on top of this box, I can put the text field inside. So what I'm going to throw inside here is our email text field. You guys with me so far? This is just like subview inception is what we're doing here. You're going to have to do this tomorrow, just so you know.
So I just made a text field and I did everything that we did inside of the text field. Should I go back and then just do it over later?
It'll work. I just wanted to show you guys this so that you can practice.
So let's say it works, it just looks weird.
Yeah,
kind of.
This will make sure that it fits inside perfectly, because I remember reading some Airtables from this week from you guys, and a couple of you said it's really hard to make geometric shapes inside of a view. And sub-layering like this is the way that you kind of perfect that art. It's just like giving smaller spaces for things to exist inside makes them look really clean. Because trying to guess where everything's going to go on this big view is hard. But if we can define this UI view, and then I can draw or place that text view inside, it's going to make my life a lot easier. So Donovan, you can go along with it, but I will post the completed project at the end. So if you guys need that, no worries. Okay. So now that we've added that text view, I'm sorry, the text field inside of the view, what's next?
Other constraints that you're going to constrain to the container view for the text field.
Yep, so we got to translate, auto, resize, default, so that we can make our own constraints. And now this is going to be kind of interesting, kind of how we decide to set this up. It's really up to you guys. I'll walk you, well, we can do this. I can have you guys go along with it and try to guess what to do, or I can show you what I would do. What would you guys prefer?
Well, I have a question. And when you're going about these, setting up these anchors, there's a certain way you should do one before the other. Should you do leading, like a certain order, like leading, top, trailing, or can you do any order?
It's going to depend on how your app looks, but I feel like a great place to start is the top and the leading. Those are just, you know, we tend to read things from top to bottom and left to right. So those are great places to kind of focus your attention. And like I said, everything needs an X and a Y position. So if you give it a trailing and a leading edge, a leading and a top edge, it'll be safe to live there. It'll be able to live in that spot that you pin it to. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it some constraints. I'll just walk you through because I'm gonna have, you know, we're kind of gonna do this part together, and then I'm gonna leave you guys for a few minutes and create this second password part just kind of based off of what we created up here. So what I would do is I would say, okay, our email text field, and I'm going to start with the leading anchor. And then as far as the constraints go, I've got a couple of spots for it to live from, but it's inside this container view. So I want to constrain things to specifically where it's living inside of. So I'm going to say email container view. I want to access its leading anchor. And then, like I said, 8 is a really good number. So like 8 and 20 are really good magical numbers to know with just constraints. So I'm going to say, I want the text field to start 8 points in from this border. So from where our view starts to exist, I'm going to go 8 points in. Because, I mean, I don't want it to fill in this whole thing. I'd rather it just come in. It'll look a little bit sharper when you see it. And then we'll go ahead and set that to true. Same thing, I'll do the text field and the top anchor. Dot constraint. And then this one you could do equal system spacing. You could do it in a number of ways. I'm just going to do it how we did above. Same thing, I'm just going to say email container view. Whoops. Dot top anchor. And then give it that constant of 8. And then set is active to true. As you guys go through and learn more about programmatic constraints, you're going to find better ways to do this with fewer lines of code. Today, I think doing more lines of code will actually save you the struggle of going back to try to figure out how you did things tomorrow. So this will help. But like I said, you'll get better and better at these. And then let's do the trailing anchor. And email container view dot trailing anchor. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Trailing anchor. And then what is the constant value that I should probably put here?
8.
-8.
-8. Because it's a trailing edge, we don't want it to go to the right, to positive end of the trailing edge. We want it to come in from the trailing edge.
I kind of have a dumb question. Is there a reason that we should add or never add like 8.0? Like, because I added 8.0 and looked at yours and you just have 8. Is there a difference or no?
You can. I'm like probably being a little bit like indirect because CG floats are doubles, and well, I mean they're floats, but they're values that can hold decimal properties. You technically should put point whatever afterwards, but because we're just using kind of integers, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. But maybe there will be circumstances where you want your border width to be 2.5. General like grammar laws say that if you use a decimal point in one of your integers, which turns it into a double, you should do it with every single one. But we'll just be using whole numbers, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so in theory, we've got this text view. It exists, it's there, but I can't really see it unless I do something about it. So what's something that I could indicate to the user that that's a place where they, other than the view around it, right? What's the thing that I could do to indicate to the user that this is where they type?
A placeholder text.
Email text field dot placeholder. And this is just a string value. Oh. This is just a string. So we can give it whatever string we want, and I'm just going to say email. Now, if everything goes well, I should be able to hit run. And inside that view with the border, we should have a text field existing inside of it. Looks a little funky. We can go and fix it here in a second. But I can go in, should be able to, yeah. I can come in and text, you know, whatever I want. I can write out whatever I want. Can anyone tell me why it's kind of at the top part of this text field?
For some reason, mine's dead in the center, but I don't think I have anything.
Like in the center, right, like right here.
Oh, you added 50 to your equal to? I think
Yeah,
I
I was
have
about to say
40.
So yeah, if you did 40, it probably would look fine. But I mean, there's still something missing that's going to cause, you know, the bigger that our height gets, the more you guys will see that the text won't be centered in the text field.
Set the alignment in the text field.
Yeah, we could realign it so like when the user starts to type. But the real key thing, and you guys will see it here, I'm going to put 100 so we have like a really big text field. And I hope if nothing else that you guys will just appreciate storyboards a lot more after we go through this, because they're lifesavers. They help a lot.
Isn't there a way where we could constrain the center of the placeholder or the text to the center of the container?
Yeah, we could, but I'm just going to show you a faster way. So the problem is we have constrained this here, and if I just type, I just keep typing, I mean, the text field will extend as long as it needs to, but the problem is we've given it an anchor on the left, on the top, and on the right, but we're saying we don't care what's happening with the bottom. So the real issue here is that we should give it a bottom anchor. Okay, so we give it the bottom anchor dot constraint, and then yeah, same thing. We'll just do email container view dot bottom anchor, and then what value do we want to put in here?
-8.
Yeah, someone tell me why it's -8.
It's counting upward.
Yes, just think of it like a graph. So if the point that that anchor is at on a graph. If it's going to be above, it's going to be positive. It's going to be below, it's going to be negative. So we want to come above that point. We need to move -8 points away from it. Let me go ahead and run this now. And we should see, oh, it's 100, so it's going to look a little ugly. But that email text field is going to be dead in the middle of the view. The user is going to start to type here on the left end, but we know it's at least centered. So if we come back here and we put 50 in again for that height constant, then it's going to look really clean and sharp. What questions do you guys have about the label, view, and text field setup that we've done here? Does it all make sense? Do you feel like you could do it by yourself fairly easily now?
I think I'm getting there.
Good. Okay. So now what we've done is we've kind of set this up so that the user can see where they enter their email. I'm just as for sake of UI, I'm just going to say enter email here in our email label.text. And then I think it just looks like really clean and sharp once we launch this. So you guys will see that like it only takes a little bit of practice to start to stylize your apps to give you kind of like a personal feel and kind of turn it away from kind of that generic Apple look. And that will really differentiate the personal apps that you guys make. So yeah, that looks sharp. We got that there.
Hey Mitchell, can you make it look embossed?
Probably. I've never done it. There's a bunch of properties too. You mean like the text inside of it, or what do you mean?
No. Like, so it would look like that the text box was actually dropped down in. It has to do with shadowing. Like you'd have to do the top, you have to do the left and right.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you hell, actually. I just was sitting here thinking I'd love to see that embossed, meaning it looks like it's dropped down into the border.
I could give it a try. This is Josh. I actually like that you're grilling me a little bit. This is fun. What we can do is I could come into a UI color initializer and 216 or 255, I think it is just the generic. I think it's just generic white. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is just white. And then the alpha is going to be how like translucent it is. So if it's an alpha of 1, it'll be super deep. But if I do, let's do 0.1. If I did this right, I'm pretty sure you'll see that there's kind of like a shadow behind, like where you actually are going to type into the text field. Maybe it's not what you're going for, Josh, but you can't see it super well. But if I go up on the alpha a little bit and go like 0.5, I think you'll be able to see it a lot better. Yeah, you can see that there's definitely like a box that lives inside of there. So like I said, you guys can practice around with your UI and kind of play with it to see what kind of cool effects you can produce. Once you start to know what you're doing in code, you have a lot of flexibility with it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to commit because we've configured our email entry setup, I guess I will say. There's just a little bit left to do. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to leave this kind of open for you guys to look at. But what we're going to do going forward here is I want you to do the same thing that we've done with your email label, container view, and text field, and do the same for the password. So we'll take 9 minutes. We'll take until half after. Take 9 minutes on your own. You guys can talk together in this group chat too if you want to, but take that time and start to recreate what we did here, but just with the password elements instead. So it should be kind of a copy-paste kind of situation, but you're gonna have to intuitively think through your anchors and maybe how you wanna go down from these anchors. So take a break if you need to though, but after that, we're just gonna add a button and then we're gonna be done. And that'll be it for us. So yeah, take that time. Let me know if you have questions. I'm gonna step to the bathroom really quick. And where's the, oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, let me know if you guys have questions. If I'm not around to answer them right away, just write them in the chat maybe, or talk about them together, and we can get it figured out in a bit.
Taylor, I just figured out that app that you recommended this morning.
Yeah.
I figured out today, messing around with it, that it does the same as the other paid app. It'll give you this Swift code for whatever you just drew.
Oh, did you use Swift code? Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, over on the right, you change it from design over to code, and then make sure you have iOS selected. And then it'll literally give you all the Swift code you need to make that design you just drew.
Okay, well, I'm about to go look at that right now.
I was like,
about, Joshua?
what's that called again?
Figma.
Figma, yeah.
Figma.
And as far as I can tell, it's free. It's free for like individual or like 2 people on a team.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a design app that's like SVG, scalable vector.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did.
Is it something similar to paint code?
Well, paint code is the one. I mean, paint code to me looks better in terms of its usability, but it's paint code, as far as I know, isn't like meant to be like a group development. Whereas Figma, you can actually have your team, and there are plugins. You can have a chat plugin. You can have all kind of stuff where your team can be sitting there designing all together.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I'll look at the code right now. That's cool.
Pretty
I was
cool.
looking at paint code earlier, but I'll look at Figma.
Yeah, but paint code's $100 after the 5-day free trial.
Yeah.
This one, I believe, it's free indefinitely.
Sweet. You're fine.
I'm not on the right computer to show you what I was fooling with. But I still have this one logo I did years ago, and it's got like a Zen kind of swoosh. It's over 3,000 lines of code.
Holy cow.
Yeah, the first Bezier is all these paths put together to make that swoosh. And it's got that, it's got like a 2 text fields, which are pretty easy and short. And then it's got a butterfly, which is maybe, like that much code. But the swoosh thing, you know what I'm talking about. You ever seen like the Zen, someone took a paintbrush and did a circle and then picked up right before the end? I found that online somewhere or whatever, an SVG, and was using something like Illustrator, but not Illustrator, which is fine, but every time I tried to paste that into Xcode, that like over 3,000 lines of code, it kept crashing my Xcode. So I was like, okay, I don't have time for this. I have to hit MVP on this project.
Yeah, that sounds awful. Oh man.
I mean, at that point, you might as well just use an image. I mean, that you could scale.
Yeah.
I don't have to reach that many points.
That's what, when I made a logo for my build. Are you guys talking about like app logos to make for when you actually see it in the, like on a simulator?
Well, but some of these apps, you can draw in them, and then they'll actually give you all the Swift code you need, to use Core Graphics to draw it out.
Yeah.
So you don't have to know all those points and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool ones too. Like you'll see later, Paul Solt will be a different teacher. He uses Sketch a lot to draw things out. I think you have to pay for Sketch, but Sketch is a really easy way to create logos, and then it will actually consolidate those images into the different assets that you need to put in your Xcode project. So you don't actually have to put any code in, and your asset folder will just produce that logo that you need. It's really cool. So, all right, guys. Did we make
that on our last build?
Oh, sorry. What were you saying, Josh?
Don't worry about it. You're getting back on task.
Okay. Did anyone get it working? Did anyone get this?
I got about like 80% of the way there, 70% of the way there. I'm right now making the container view, finishing up on the container view, but I got the label to appear right underneath the inner email where it should be.
Okay. Yeah, the trickiest part is just like seeing it in advance in your head of like what things need to be anchored to and kind of how to approach it. Let's go tackle the next part. So we've got our, and you guys don't have to do this, but I feel like it helps me organize my code a little bit better. This whole function is super long actually for a function. We should probably consolidate, but tomorrow, and actually the solution code that the instructors wrote for tomorrow's project, because I never actually did it, I kind of had to look through it. Their function for setup views is like about, it's longer than this actually. So tomorrow, if you end up writing your setup views like this, you're on the right track, like according to the way the instructors would have done it. So don't worry about length or lines of code. All right, let's do our password label next. What I'm gonna honestly do is I'm just gonna go to our email label, and this code is pretty reusable. What I can do is just paste it in and then just kind of modify depending on what's inside of it. So the big problem is we haven't made a variable for our...
I thought you swore by reps, Mitch, muscle memory.
Well, I mean, we can type it all out, but I'm going to...
I just don't want to get left behind while you do this.
Yeah, life is about balance, okay?
True, there is balance, but also...
reps, but then again, oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot of corner cutting, I would say, as a coder, and you guys will get used to it. Like, there's a lot of times at Stack Overflow where you're going to see something that got written out, and you're like, cool, I can use that. And you have the flexibility to go and type it all, or you can just copy paste. But code can be pretty reusable in a different circumstance. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take our password label. We've added it to the sub view, and then I'm just going to go through each line here because this is set up like a label, and it's going to be pretty congruent with what we did with the earlier one. And I'm just going to adjust it depending on what's going to be different here. So we definitely want to translate auto resizing masked into constraints. And then I want to give it a leading constraint. We can go ahead and set it to the leading anchor, but because we've been kind of balancing everything off this email label, because if you can tell, like our email container view is kind of relying on the email label, I kind of want to just trail it back to the email label, because if we make any changes, everything will be done once rather than several times. So our leading anchor is going to be equal to the email label's leading anchor. So that looks sharp for me. That looks good. And then the other problem here is that we have a constant. So when we run this, it's going to line up at the leading anchor of the email label, and then it's go 20 points out away from it. So we're gonna do away with this. We could put it in, you guys could see what would happen, but it would be ugly. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do the password label. Top anchor. And what do we want this top anchor to be hooked to?
The bottom anchor of the email?
Yep, bottom anchor of which aspect of the email?
The container view.
Yes, perfect. So we're going to take, rather than the top anchor, what we're going to say is we're going to say email container view dot bottom anchor. And then this also had a constant because we kind of hard coded that in. Let's get rid of that. So you guys are starting to click. I like hearing this because it's starting to make sense now, which is good. Okay, same thing here as we did on line 72. I'm going to say password labels trailing anchor is equal to the email labels trailing anchor, and I'm going to get rid of that constant. Like I said, we can keep it in, but it'll get a little bit ugly. And then password label, instead of entering email here, we're going to say enter password here. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and set the font. And then fingers crossed everything goes well. So you guys saw how like reusable this code was. We probably could have made a separate function that did all this for us, but there were a little bit of perky things that we had to just check. But if everything goes well, we should see that email label, password label right below the email container view. So in other words, right below that border that we made. And there it is. Now, the problem is we constrained it right up to the top. So how should I go about fixing this so that it's not right next to that top part?
You can either do 8 spacing or the system spacing.
Yeah, let's just be congruent and use that system spacing. So if I'll actually just go from here back. I don't know why Alexa's trying to talk to me.
Connecting to the internet. Take a look at the help
Okay.
section in your Alexa app.
We're going to say equal to system spacing below. And then we'll say email container view dot bottom anchor. And then the multiplier, we're just going to give it 1 because I don't want to stretch it any more than it probably would. So the multiplier, if we gave it a multiplier of 2, and the system spacing defaults to 0, or I'm sorry, to 8. So if I give it a 2, it's going to space 16 points. If I give it a 3, it'll space more. What is that? It's 18 points, yeah. So it's just going to depend on how, or I'm sorry, 24 points. It's just going to depend on how much you want your multiplier to be. So now that we made that space, we should see, nice. There's a little bit more of a gap. It looks a little bit more sharp. We're totally free to go back in and fix that if we want to, but so far it looks pretty good. Okay, cool. Let's tackle the last bit. We're almost done, you guys. So we're going to do it.
Can I use the bathroom since I wrote this out?
Go for it. You're great.
Thank you.
And like I said, you guys, you're not like obligated to be here. It's not like a morning lecture where we expect you to be there. This is totally just, I do it for fun and I do it to help you guys. You're here because I assume that you want to do well tomorrow. So I feel like just a win-win if you're here.
You have a sick sense of fun, Mitch. I love it.
Well, I don't know. This is just good practice, right? Like I only went through this material once. So now that I get to go back and teach it to you guys, it helps it kind of layer in for me too. So
Hey, Mitch,
No, I'm kidding. I
I
appreciate
say the
it.
best way to learn is to teach, right?
100%, I agree. I've done a bunch of random teaching. I taught as a missionary. I taught Japanese for 2 years. I taught English in China, and it's just like teaching is the way to go if you want to really learn a subject. Okay, so we're going to add a subview here, and now we haven't made our container view yet. This is the exact same as this border that we're going to make. And like Donovan was saying, he did it without this border, and this is purely for stylistic elements and so that this text view can live inside. You can totally opt out of doing it. I just think it looks sharper. And a majority of websites that you sign into will have some sort of border around their text view. Okay, so we'll go into the top. And then this one we're going to say, password container view be of type UIView. And we'll initialize it. And then we'll go down here and funnel it into our subview. Same thing. And tomorrow you will have some reusable code. You'll have some code that won't be as reusable. This one's nice because it's kind of like everything follows kind of a similar pattern. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go up to our container view. Line 52 through 60 is really like good reusable code. I'm just going to go back in and use this. The pain part being just that I have to go in every time and hit password instead. But this will help you because you can go through each line and be like, is this working exactly how I want it to? Yes. So we want the container view to be able to set constraints how we want them programmatically, so that's good. And then the next part, the leading anchor is going to be equal to the email label's leading anchor. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Yeah.
That's not a trick question. I think that sounds about right. Cool. And then let's go down. Password container view, top anchor, constraint, equal spacing to line below, email label. Do we want this to be email label? What do we want it to be?
Password label.
Password label. Yeah, because we're just kind of like stacking down. It's kind of like just building blocks like Tetris. So instead of, if we did the email label, we would be layering these on top of each other. But instead of constraining it to the password label, it's now going to exist underneath that. So that looks sharp to me. Next part, container view trailing anchors equal to the email label's trailing anchor. That looks fine to me. We want to be congruent with the height as well. So this one, it would look really ugly if the first view was 50 points and the second one was 100. Like that would just look pretty ugly and awful. So let's keep that the same. And then these look good too. We want them to follow the same pattern. Black border, 2-inch, or not inches, but 2-point width, and then 5-point corner radius. So like a 5-point curve is what I would say. So we'll say password for each of these. And then best case scenario, this just looks exactly like our other view. It just won't have a text field inside of it yet because we still got to create that programmatically. There we go. It's coming along pretty well. It's like looking pretty sharp. Cool. And then let's tackle the password text field. So I'll have you guys walk me through this one. How should we start out programmatically creating this?
You should do the password container view dot add subview.
You should create your variable.
Yeah, I mean, whatever order we want to do it in, we'll just have to go back to. So we're going to add that subview. We haven't made the variable or the constant. And I'm just making them constants. They probably should be private, but I mean, just for the sake of...
Hey, what's the difference between private and just regular let? Does that just basically mean you can only use this in this class only?
Yep, so privates will only exist inside of this class. And so like...
So is there like a functional difference? Like if they recommend we use a private let, is that because of functional use?
If you like, let's say we were going to create multiple UI controls. So I did like a sign up page and then we were going to make a different like button or something. And I was going to name things similarly. I would use private lets or private vars just to exist inside the things that I made them. But then like, if you want things to be public, oftentimes like when we do a segue, we're going to want to pass something from one view controller to another. We want to make that accessible to multiple objects. So that's why you would use just a public. This would say like public, but it just defaults to being public like that. And then private being that it can only exist inside of the class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, so now that we made that, wait, did I actually make that? No, not all the way. So this is gonna be of UI text field. And then initialize it. Cool. So we got that there. And then we'll go ahead and add in our password text field. And then same thing. You know, this is called dry. So dry meaning that you don't repeat yourself. So what we would try to do is like consolidate as much code as possible to be reusable and not, you know, keep typing out the same thing. But if you notice, like our anchors are different in some aspects. So if this seems like we're not following that dry principle of don't repeat yourself and don't code yourself, we kind of have to here because that's the nature of making unique UI. But just to let you know, dry is something you guys should follow, like write as minimal amount of code as possible, which I think you could agree with that that's a better route to go down. Anyways, so let's go into our email text field code and let's just use this because it's going to be very similar. So same thing, our password text field, we want to be able to constrain that how we want. And then here we go. So we got password text field's leading anchor is equal to the email container view's leading anchor. That would probably work. Let's leave it as is because I actually feel like that'll be fine. We can go back and change it later if we want to. The point being is that it just needs to be on the same, like, let me pull it up. It just needs to start at the same point as this one starts. So then password text field's top anchor constraint is equal to email container view dot top anchor. Do we need to change this one?
Should be bottom anchor, right?
Password text field. Well, this is the top anchor. So this is going to be the top anchor to not the email container view. Password container view. And then we're giving that 8-point constant so that there's a 8-point of space gap between when the text field starts and when this border starts here. Okay. Next one down. This one I'm also going to keep the same just because I like that trailing anchor. I think it's going to work just fine for us. And then email text field dot bottom anchor. We do need to change this one as well. So what should we be changing this equal to here? The bottom part of the text field should be equal to what?
The bottom of the password container.
Yes. And then it's going to go 8 points up away from that. Okay, and then for the placeholder, let's just go ahead and hit password. Go ahead and give this a run.
Hey, y'all, I got to bail. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Have a good night.
Just so you know, I was watching y'all do this. I was working on the afternoon project. I finally got MVP.
Nice.
Plus stretch. So it took a little debugging, but.
Okay, does anyone know why I'm not seeing the placeholder in here?
Email text field dot placeholder text. Oh yeah, placeholder.
Yeah, I have email. This one needs to be password text field. So now we should come in here, and it should look pretty sharp. Nice. And I probably should change this because most emails don't have a first letter being uppercased, but it is what it is. Okay, cool. Now, what is the last thing that we need to add into this to make it sharp? I'm not talking about like being functional. I'm just as far as UI goes.
A button?
Yep. All right, somebody walk me through how we might make a button for this.
Create your variable button of UI button and then initialize it.
Yep. Let login button be of type UI button. And then we'll go ahead and initialize. So that looks good there.
Then add your subview login button or whatever you called it.
Yep. So add subview.
Login. And then login button dot translates auto resizing mask.
Yep.
False. Then login button dot leading anchor dot constraint equal to, I put password container view dot leading anchor because I want it underneath that password view, if that's correct.
Yeah, I think that would work for us. we're gonna do that equal spacing below. Equal to system spacing, and I'm just gonna do it 8 points. I mean, the system spacing defaults to 8 points. So I'm just gonna do that below our password container views bottom anchor. That makes sense, everybody? So what we did is we just said, or I'm sorry, not the leading anchor. That needs to be this needs to be the top anchor. Sorry, I went a step ahead and got a little excited. For the leading anchor, we're gonna do just like we've done before. We're gonna take the email labels dot, well, there's a lot of ways we could go about this actually. For now, I'm gonna do the email labels leading edge. And then let's, I can't decide if I want to actually do this yet to let you guys see what it's going to look like to modify it. Let's just have it start with that. So it's going to be square up to the email labels leading anchor, just like we've done with pretty much everything else. And what is the problem with this? Equal spacing to equal to system spacing below. And then this is going to be our password container view dot bottom anchor multiplier of 1, and then is active is true.
So you're adding a button for each of these?
No, we already added the button. These are constraints.
But wouldn't this appear underneath the email label?
Nope. We want it to appear underneath here probably, right?
Yeah, but the way you have it set up now, is that how, or am I misunderstanding that? The leading anchor equal to the email label?
Yep, here's our email label, so it's going to line up here.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
Flush.
Yeah, and then we can adjust the constant later or even put it in the middle if we want to. And then let's do a trailing anchor just to be safe. And I'm going to do that equal to one. So we're going to do email label dot trailing anchor. And I won't give it a constant yet. We will come back to this and give it a constant to make it look sharp. But I think there's probably a couple ways we can go about making this look better. Okay, so we've got that. We've got some constraints for our button to live in. Now, the problem is even if the button has a constraint, we can't see it. It's invisible now as is. So can you guys think of some elements that the button might need to have to actually show up?
Background color?
Yeah, we can do a background color.
And a font color, I think.
Font color as well. I mean, we should have like text, right?
Yeah, these are
But
string.
to actually say something. So let's do login button dot And what's the property we use to make to show text in a button?
Title.
And it's actually going to be set title. So it says sets the title to use for the specific state. That's the one that we're going to use. This is for buttons specifically. So set title, we pass in a string. So let's just say login. And then the control state, there's an enum for just like a bunch of different properties. The one that you guys are going to use the most is normal. It just means like when the app is running how it's supposed to, this is how it's supposed to look. Okay, let's give this a run and see if it shows up for us and see what it looks like. All right, that looks pretty sharp. Looks pretty good. What do you guys think you would want to change about this specifically?
Border.
Yeah, let's put a border around it. Someone maybe walk me through how we would do that.
Login button dot layer dot border color equals UI color open parents. I usually do RGB.
Yeah, we can be like super simple. I'm just gonna do, let's just do a black border. And we have to make it a CG color because this border color is from Core Graphics and it needs to be a CG color. So anyways, so that should give us a nice little border. You guys will see something wrong about this right away though, probably.
It needs a border width.
Yes, exactly. So let's go ahead and make that border width. Oops, layer dot border width. And then the border width that we used earlier was 2. So let's just stick with that. Give it a run and see what it looks like. It's gonna look a little ugly, I'm guessing. Yeah, it's like pretty long, pretty ugly. I don't love the way the button looks specifically, but it could work. I'm gonna show you guys a little trick to make this a little easier. So we've got these two constraints, the leading and the trailing, and they're lined up perfectly with these other text fields that we've made, I guess the UI views that we've made. Can anyone think of a way that maybe we could make the button smaller, but keep it where it is?
You can add a constant and just give it a number.
Yeah, that's a way to do it for sure. But the problem is if we give it a constant from one side and from another side, we might not know where the middle exactly is. We would have to guess what the middle of the screen would be. There's actually a really easy way to do this. So I'm gonna delete line, I think I can do this. I'm gonna delete line 104. And I'm also gonna delete line 105. So the trailing and the leading edges are gone. Those constraints are gone. All I have now is just a top anchor constraint. So what I'm gonna do now actually is there is a cool constraint. You guys will actually have to use this tomorrow, but it's called center, and we have a center X anchor and a center Y anchor. So this one says a layout anchor representing the horizontal center of the view's frame. And then the Y is the vertical center. So which of these two do we want to use to line up that perfectly in the middle of the screen?
X.
X. Yep, because we're on the X-axis, right? That's the horizontal axis. We want to get it right in the middle of that X-axis. So this works the same way. We can constrain it. But the cool thing that I can do here is that our actual view also has a center, and it has that center anchor. So we can say, I want the login button to live exactly in the horizontal center of the view. So our top level view and where the login button, that it can live on that line. And I won't give it a constant because I'm going to want it to sit directly in the middle of that. You guys will see how this works here in just a second. But what that's doing is just saying, hey, put that button right in the middle of the X anchor. And then we just got to make it active. Okay, now let's give this a run and see what it looks like. And because those constraints are gone, it won't look so stretched, but I think there is still going to be another issue with this. Okay, so we got it squeezed in because the constraints are smaller now, but the button looks a little funky. So this is the last part that we want to fix up, but what would you guys do to fix this?
Insets?
Yeah, we could inset. For the sake of time, and rather than writing more code, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to add extra character space in here. And that will actually lengthen out the space for us.
That's really clever.
This is me cheating. But that looks a little bit better, right? And we didn't actually have to write any more code to do it. We just gave it a little bit of extra space. There's a little bit of a buffer. And then the last thing, can you guys see a difference between this view?
The border radius?
Yep, let's fix that. Login buttons, layer dot corner radius, and we're gonna set that equal to 5, just the same as it was in our other views. So to be fair, that was me cheating. There are better, more ethical ways to do that, but we've written enough code for the day. Sweet, that looks pretty sharp. One last thing I'd probably change. I don't love that everything else is black and then the login button is white. So maybe we just change the login button to be black. And usually when I get here, it's like, strings are great because strings can easily, we can access like their title and their color, but buttons, switches, and things are a little different. So what I usually do is I will go to some sort of color, like type in color and see what initializers come up for me. This one says sets the color of the title to use for the specified state. So if we look at how we set up the title on 106, this is just a similar initializer. And what we'll do here is we can just say UIColor.black. You don't even have to put UI color there. Xcode is smart enough to just use the UI color that you label it into. Same thing here, we're just gonna do .normal. And then if I run it now, that login text should be black and it should look a little better. Maybe it looks not as better, I'm not sure. There we go. I'm not obsessed with it, but there we are. I think it looks okay. But like considering that not a lot of us knew how to do like these deep programmatic elements, this looks like pretty sharp for a sign up page. I think it looks pretty sharp. I think we did a good job. So as far as what I wanted you guys to practice today, I feel like we got a really good dose of it. I really wanted you specifically to make code, like make programmatic UI. I wanted you to get some practice doing constraints. I wanted you to get some practice like doing things like changing font, border color, width, corner radius. I wanted you to sublayer things. So like put down a view and then put something inside of that subview. I wanted you guys to get practice with that. If I had more time, I think we're gonna cut it off, but what I'll give you guys for a tip is look up UI text field delegate. You'll be really happy that you've kind of done a little bit of research on it tomorrow, because if this is pretty easy to use, setting up programmatic UI, all you're gonna have to worry about is just the text field delegate tomorrow. That's my suggestion to you. So, do you guys have any more questions about what we did here with this sign up page? Can you guys give me a 1 to 3 in the chat if you were assigned to like make a sign up page like this? 3 being like, I could do it right now. Like it would take some time, but I could do it. 2 being like, I would have to go back to this code and like really understand what's going on. And 1 being, it went right over my head. Nice. Sweet. Okay. So I hate to break it to you, tomorrow you're not going to be making a sign up page, but you're going to be doing something similar, and you're just going to be putting views inside of views and making UI. You're only going to have to make 1 UI control. So it'll be a lot like what we did here. We're layering views, adding views, putting more views in it, constraining them. And then there's going to be just some fun logic. I think it'll be like a fun puzzle for you guys tomorrow. So you guys did great. If you guys have questions after this, let me know, and I can answer those, in a chat, or if you need to Zoom, let me know as well. Does anyone have any more questions about this project today before we close out? Okay, if you're feeling pretty solid about this, I think you'll do well tomorrow. You'll get through the actual programmatic UI pretty quickly, and then you'll have a lot of time to devote to the logic, which I think will take a little bit more of just like thinking through how it's going to work. But you guys are going to do great. I'll be posting this recording later so that you can see it. And then, yeah, I think we're going to close out for the night. So if you guys need anything else, DM me. I'll also post the completed project here as well, so you can refer back to it tomorrow in case you got lost today or something's not working. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate you, and good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.